Good afternoon. It's June 14th. Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Shaparenko, and I want to thank everybody who joins us. Today, we will start with a conversation about the situation in the Donetsk region. Joining us online is the military governor of Donetsk region, Mr. Pavlo Kyrylenko. Good afternoon, Mr. Pavlo. Good afternoon. This night, Russia inflicted another terroristic strike on our country, including Donetsk region. We know about 3 casualties. Do you have any more information about this terroristic act and its consequences for the region? Yes, that's right. On 14th of June, about 5 o'clock in the morning, Russia inflicted 2 synchronous strikes using X-22 missiles on Konstantinovka and the city of Kramatorsk on the civil infrastructure. There was 1 casualty in Konstantinovka and 2 more injured. It was found out later about the 2nd person injured when they addressed for medical aid in Kramatorsk. We had 2 casualties and 2 more people were injured as a result of the strike on the residential area on the small settlement which is a part of Kramatorsk communities which submits to Kramatorsk military administration. During the last days, on the night from 13th to 14th June, the enemy was inflicting strikes on Donetsk community. All the front line is under constant shelling. In fact, besides, the strikes were inflicted in Novoselkivska community and the Volnovakha district. There are active battles going on in Volnovakha district. Our forces are advancing, but the top-level government officials and military command will report respectively about the advances of our troops. The situation is under control. In general, all the branches and services, including law enforcement agencies, are engaged in the operations related to mitigation of the strikes. But unfortunately, there are some emergency cases happening in Donetsk region on a daily basis. People address for medical help and they address relevant aid depending on the scale of their injuries, sometimes being evacuated to other regions of Ukraine. Well, we're hearing some positive news from the front lines. The counteroffensive is underway. Some villages are liberated, including those in the Donetsk region. Could you please tell us what is the current situation? And we know that Russian troops are trying to fight back. What is the situation in this regard? Well, the situation is stable. There is a good tendency of offensive operations. The positions that were taken by our troops, including the liberated areas in Volnovakha district, Neskuchna, Makarivka, and others, are currently deoccupied. The clearing is underway in those areas. The clearing of remnants, so to say, of Russian troops. Some of them decided to hide in those villages. So now the algorithm is such: first, before the military administrations in coordination with the law enforcement agencies proceed to the stabilization measures, the territory is being cleared. Then goes demining of the alleyways of approach, and then the stabilization measures are being taken. Now that the territories are being cleared from the enemy, the evacuation of the population, of those not so numerous citizens who remained in their homes, is going on to the bigger cities where they are being provided the necessary food ratios, psychosocial support, and so on. In total, we had 30 such persons, including 1 disabled. On top of that, there are bulletins prepared for such people, because there is no single settlement in the region where people could feel safe. So my position as a military governor of the region is the evacuation those people who stay in the region, apart from those who ensure the proper operation of the critical infrastructures and operation of the local governments, including military administration and those engaged in stabilization measures, for full communication with the military. Let's not forget about the efficient work on the fortification structures. Regardless of our success, we still have to reinforce our positions. Well, the occupiers keep shelling the villages and towns incessantly. Could you please tell us, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, what is the number of casualties in Donetsk region? Thank you. Well, when I say this number, I'm giving the number without account of Volnovakha and Mariupol, so that there is no distortion of information, that information is clear and strict. Unfortunately, the figures are increasing tens of thousands times. We have to understand it after the deoccupation of our heroic city of Mariupol and heroic city of Volnovakha. So we will be able to name the number of casualties. So without Mariupol and Volnovakha, the number of casualties is 1,561 person plus 3,689 injured as a result of the battle operations in the Donetsk region. That's exclusively among the civilians, because the law enforcement and the military is not for publicity for the time being. Well, you mentioned Mariupol and Volnovakha. Do we know about the situation in the temporarily occupied territories? I mean, those cities and others. Well, the enemy understands the way the front line is moving, not completely, obviously, thanks to the talent of our military command and the government officials to wisely plan the counteroffensive operations. As to the way that the occupiers are going to act further on, well, they're trying to make the front line straight to rectify the situation in Bakhmut, because I don't want to say anything redundant, but the situation is developing not in their favor, so the enemy ends up in a kind of a forceps, and they would not be able to normally fulfill their withdrawal. We know that there is a mass mobilization going on in the temporarily occupied territories. People are being forced, literally saying they're being forced to obtain Russian citizenship, but our movements, our actions are weighted, are very straight. We are on our land and we are about to liberate it. So regarding the humanitarian situation under Ukrainian control, power supply, water supply, all the basic needs of the population covered. The basic needs of the population are covered to the full extent. All the needs are being covered in a coordinated way. The food ratios, the hygienic products for those living in the territories under Ukrainian control, so people get food rations in sufficient amount, even more than sufficient amount. There is a normal electric power supply, regardless of the difficulties and maybe daily shutdowns due to the interrupted operation of the power lines, which are being repaired by our power technicians. So the electric power supply is normal in the most of the territory. There is no power supply in the villages along the front lines due to two main reasons. First, the area lines cannot be repaired right upon the deoccupation, right upon the moving of the front lines, because the transformer substations are completely destroyed along with the area lines. They are literally shut down by the artillery of the enemy. They did it intentionally. And in those areas where people remain, they use generators, and generators are even used for pumping water. I'm not telling you the names of the settlements intentionally because there was a task in the beginning of this year by the central government to ensure normal operation of the critical infrastructure using generators in all such villages. The situation is stable, is under control, but unfortunately the lives of the denizens of the region are in jeopardy. The enemy uses cannon and rocket artillery where they can, where they cannot use it due to the distance. They use their air defense systems S-300, and as it was demonstrated today, the enemy also uses X-22 missiles as they did just this night. Thank you, dear colleagues. Do we have any questions on the floor? Good afternoon, Irina Mamcher, Ukrinform. During today's morning shelling of Kramatorsk and Konstantinivka, there was a damage of a gas line and electric area lines. Is the damage serious, and how much time will be needed for the repair? The repair works are underway. This evening I will be getting the report from the local military governor regarding the condition of the repair of the gas line, which was supplying the gas to the residential area. And I have to tell you, this is not the first time that the enemy damages the gas supply lines and the electric area lines. They do it again intentionally. Thank you very much. You mentioned the evacuation from those villages that are just recently deoccupied. Could you please give us the number of people who were still residing in those villages since the beginning of our counteroffensive? How many people do still remain there? I got you. Those people, 29 persons, and by this morning the number reached 30, including one person with disability. So we're not talking about people who leave voluntarily or don't want to go. We just take them and carry them away. There is the stabilization point, then there is first psychological aid, then people get food rations, and then they get evacuated to safer regions. So those evacuated from those villages are the people who were still residing in those villages. Generally in Volnovakha district there were not more than 700 people residing until the 24th of February 2022. I'm not saying it to show off, but you know, the figures and facts is a very straight thing. We can clearly state the result we have achieved. So the evacuation has started on the 24th of February, and from 1,800,000 people who were residing in the region, by the end of June 2023 there are only 350,000 people living in the big cities in the region. And evacuation from the Volnovakha district, we remember how the conditions, how the situation was unfolding. So with the evacuation from Volnovakha, we started it back, well, I remember those days. We were there 25th, 26th of February. The buses were evacuating people under shells from those locations back in 2022. So you can imagine, it's been more than 1 year and 3 months, and it brought good results. You know, the people who were left there, they're mostly elderly. They are in a difficult psycho-emotional condition. And for example, in Blagodatne there were 370 residential buildings, private buildings. Not more than 20% remain undamaged. All their, well, they are partly damaged, but 80% are in fact destroyed by Russian artillery. So in those villages, among those evacuated 29 people, there are no more residents, correct? No more residents at all. Well, I cannot disclose all the information. There are active battles going on that well, the incessant shelling is going on there. It's like 1.5 kilometer distance from the front line. The enemy tries to beat our guys from the front lines, so our troops are clearing the territory from the enemy. As soon as we proceed to the stabilization measures and the bigger settlements are being opened, bigger in terms of population, in terms of area, we will keep you informed respectively. Thank you very much, Mr. Pavlo. If we don't have any more questions on the floor, I'm reminding you joining us was Pavlo Kyrylenko, the military governor of the Donetsk region, and we will continue at 13:30. We will be talking about the influence of the catastrophe in Kakhovka HPP on the operation of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Stay tuned.